Hi guys, this video is prompted by an email from Gary that we all received on Trainspotting TV, and on looking at that I found Sebastian Schlauser's TV shots in 4K, absolutely beautiful, showing multiple train units coming down the line. This prompted me to look at my own layout and see what I could do with double headers, and here we go. Well guys, I hope you enjoyed those two videos, and what I want to do now is cover a more technical area on the use of train controller. In addition to what's shown on this list on the screen should be profiling, but I don't plan to cover profiling. Suffice it to say that what that means is the train controller runs the lock through every single speed step and measures precisely what speed is produced by the loco and keeps record of that so that when it's running two locos it can run them at the same speed. So let's have a look at some of the locks that I have been using and a pair that you haven't seen. Of course all my locks are converted to the 5-pole DC motor with DCC decoders, lock sound decoders, or they purchased as the ESU are brand new with the full ESU setup. So that if we look in the top left hand corner, you see two E03s coupled to a Roco track cleaning coach, and I've used these off and on for the past 2 years to push around the layout and do some track cleaning. The two locks are quite interesting because the light cream one dates back to 1980 or thereabouts and is an LFCM motor converted, and the darker cream one is a DCM motor, same as the Lufthansa E03s. So the two locks are not identical, but they do run together quite successfully, I would say. Okay, so down in the lower left side of the screen we see the Lufthansa E03. I purchased two of these Lufthansa sets in order to be able to run a double header, and it was a rather interesting conversation I had with Ross Stewart in Australia when I started on this project, and he said to me, you really should convert one, get it profiled, get it all set up the way you want it, and then just take the entire software file and put it straight onto the second one. And in fact, that's exactly what I did with these two. I also have them both set up with Locksound V5 decoders, and I'm really happy with the way they run. It's made quite a good setup for me. On the right hand side of the screen is the ESU, a picture of one of the ESU V60s, and I have two of them, and to me they're absolutely stunning little locomotives, and out of the box they've done everything that I wanted, and so they run together very well. One of the reasons why I ran the demo as a mid-engine loco is because with telex couplers both ends, I'd have to remove the telex coupler on one loco to be able to couple the two together, and I really didn't want to muck around with the locos that way. But I can run them on the layout uncoupled, one behind the other, and it's quite a sight to see. They just track each other beautifully. Okay, so we're going to move on to some more technical stuff, and we're going to look at the settings in the block that enable me to stop the trains where I want to stop them and couple them up. So this is the picture of the block that we were looking at to join the trains in, and you can see three sensors from the left to the right, sensor 1, 2 and 3. The direction of the travel is shown as we saw it in the picture, but you can, in fact, this block is bidirectional. The braking markers are shown in yellow, and the stop markers are shown in red. So on top of this block are the braking and stop markers for reverse travel. On the bottom of the block are the braking and stop markers for the direction in travel we're talking about. The signal head that we saw in the movie is shown at the right hand side of the block, and then sensor 1 is shown here. It's basically one length of C-track, and then sensor 2 is in the middle, 2 lengths of C-track, and sensor 3 is on the right hand side, 1 length of C-track. This is basically the smallest block that I have on the layout for historical reasons, but it actually serves the purpose for what we're doing here now. So okay, so let's look at the normal stopping point in this block for any train coming through, and I also use the stopping point for the lead lock in the Lufthansa train set. You will see that we pick up a signal from sensor 2, and our braking starts immediately over 6 inches to get the lock down to our crawl speed, and then we crawl forward until we hit sensor 3, and the red marker then tells us to go 1 inch into sensor 3 and stop. Now, when the follow-up train is coming in to join, it's this highlighted sensor now. Sensor 1 is used, and we've got to get the train all the way through to a stopping point where we expect to find the rear end of the lead lock. And we cannot use sensor 2 because the lock is sitting on it. So we use sensor 1, we go in 9 inches, we ramp down over 12, and we stop when we hit 21 inches. And as you saw in the video, that's as we get to the back of the lead lock. When it comes to setting up the V60 mid-train setup, we now got wagons behind our lead lock, and so we have a concern that the wagons might be sitting out over sensor 1. So we have got a special stopping point for this train, and you can see in the stop marker, the red, we have that 5 inches into the sensor 3 position, and that's to make sure that the tail of the wagons are tucked onto sensor 2 and not left hanging out over sensor 1, which would mean that we'd have nothing to signal us to stop when we drive the second train in. Finally, when we drive the second train in, we again are using sensor 1 entirely, and through experiment we've determined where exactly the stopping point is, and these are the numbers for the braking and then the stop point, such that we just bump into the train set and couple up to it. Okay, so now comes the challenge of setting up a train controller so that it uses the right schedules with the right stopping and braking points. So the first thing we do is go to the normal stopping and braking points for any schedule and tell it which schedules should be excluded. That's this not condition that you see on the screen. So every other schedule will use this one in the normal course of events. We then go down to the individual brake markers and we indicate this is the schedule that applies to this marker. And in that way we get train controller to execute exactly as we would desire. Okay, now we have to deal with how do we get into occupied blocks and routes and how do we join the train sets together. So we go to our schedule rules and we check the boxes shown down at the bottom of the screen here to enter occupied blocks and reserve occupied blocks. And then further down in the rules, we go to the train set rules and we check these two blocks. Enter reserved destination block for joining and join in the destination block. What does that mean? That means that train controller will join the two locos together and then treat them as a single unit to drive around the track. Okay, so this now is setting up the lock or the two locks so that they'll drive together with their sound and their lights in the right settings. It's fairly complex. I don't intend to go through it all in depth here because it would be a subject of a video on its own. Suffice to say, if you look halfway down the list, you'll see function forwarding on and right near the end function forwarding off. When we turn that on, we're talking to the second lock, and when we turn it off, we're again talking to the first lock only. And so the instructions once we turn it on are to turn all the sound on and to turn the lights on that loka, the second loka, off. After we turn it off, I turn the lead lock lights on again, just to make sure that I have then the main lock running with its lights on. The critical point here is that sound must be on both locks, at least with my ESU decoders, because I set them with a startup delay for sound to start up prior to acceleration starting, and that can be the biggest reason for an uncoordinated startup, is the difference between the two locks on the startup of the sound. So I hope you found all this interesting, and if you have any questions and want to discuss further, feel free to call or email me. Look forward to hearing from you. Thanks.